I found out the next morning my heart overnight stopped for 30 seconds. The worst financial decision I've ever made because I lost tons of money doing it. I'm dead proud of that actually. I'm more proud of doing that than probably my photography or any of the other things I've done. I still feel like an imposter when it comes to landscape photography. I still feel like, you know, why do people like my photos?
You might recognise this as the studio of YouTuber and landscape photographer Nigel Danson, and I'm lucky enough to be here with Nigel today just to have a bit of a chat with him about his photography, his YouTube channel, and just more about his life in general. If you're new to this channel, my name's Rick. I'm a filmmaker and photographer from the northwest of England, and I've been working with Nigel for the last 3 years. I've worked with him on both his masterclass projects, and I've helped him out doing stuff for his YouTube channel with him from time to time. And the most recent thing you might have seen that I've worked with him on were the videos from Scotland that we produced earlier this year. So less from me, let's get straight into our chat right now. So Nigel, thank you ever so much for giving me the time this afternoon to have a bit of a chat. Obviously we've worked together for some time, so I know quite a lot about you, but your audience only see the you that appears every Sunday on YouTube. So there's quite a lot of stuff I think that people would be really interested to hear.
Yeah, I think so.
So I hope so. I'm sure they will. The first thing we should probably ask about is you are like a man of many talents. You've spoken about having a PhD before on your channel. You've spoken about working in software, and obviously you spent some time living over in America. Can you kind of talk us through that journey of work almost?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, I think, because my wife calls me frustrating because I just jump into things and just dive into things and just go head first into things without thinking of any consequences. And I think that's why I've managed to do a set of different things. So obviously I started and ended up doing a PhD at university in thin film technology, which is the same as the coating that you get on lenses, the anti-reflection coating. But I did a lot of stuff for spacecraft, for solar panels. But it wasn't something I ever planned to do. It was like, oh, I'm enjoying it at university, I'll just go and spend some more time here. But then I get bored easily as well. So like a normal person that would do a PhD would think, I'm going to dedicate my life to doing that area of expertise because I was an expert in it. But I get bored, and that's the problem. And along this whole path, there's always been photography in the background, really, as a hobby from when I was 13. So along the whole path of all the different things I've done, there's always been photography. So then when I got bored from doing my PhD, I got a job in that industry, and I worked for a company that did stuff for solar panels for NASA and European Space Agency. So it sounds grander than it is. Most exciting thing we did was just on a synchrotron radiation source. We used to get electrons hitting the solar panels and seeing what the impact of it was.
I'm not convinced that means anything. No. What's a synchrotron radiation source?
Yeah, it's just basically a big ring that spins particles at close to the speed of light, so that you can hit them at things and see what happens. CERN is one. There's a lot of talk about it when they're trying to find these particles that are unknown. But anyway, we were just hitting these glasses. It's boring science. It's not boring science, it's exciting science, but I left doing that. I had about 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 or 6 years in that industry. And then I met somebody and we set up a software company together.
As you do.
As you do, which was a big change because I left a job that was really good, earning quite a lot of money, that I trained for 7 years of my life to do. And that's a big change, really, because you have to think really hard when you're making those commitments to change. And luckily, my wife had a good job, but it was financially very difficult when we set up this software company. For the first 5 years, we had not a lot of money, but that paid off, and we grew that to a reasonable size of I think there was about 135 people when I left. So I think you could probably say that was quite successful. And and that was in sort of in the early days of social software. We were doing what's called intranets, so social. It's like a social bit of software internally within an organisation. But then I got bored of that. I've been there for about 18 years, and I thought I'll give YouTube a go. And that was just for fun, really, to begin with. And then I thought, I can make money from it. And then I wanted to do as best I could from it, because whenever I jump into something, I want to do it to the best degree I possibly can. And I suppose it wasn't my photography that I wanted to do to the best, although that was really important for me. It was more how successful I was on YouTube that was really important to me. So I thought really hard about the algorithms and looked a lot of the statistics, worked out what worked, what didn't. And then I just ended up doing what I'm doing now, really, which is literally the best job in the world ever. I get to do photography for a living, go to amazing places, and do it at my own pace, really.
So over that time, you said you were interested in photography from being 13. They sound like very demanding career paths.
Yeah, fairly demanding.
Did you get a chance to continually practice photography over that time, or did it take a bit of a backseat?
Yeah, it never took a backseat, but it took a not so much of a front seat, if you see what I mean. I was always doing photography, so whether that was, it might not have always been landscape photography, but like a lot of people, you have kids, so you take more pictures of your kids, don't you? Then go to sporting events to take pictures, you take portraits. I was always really interested in doing like close-up work. I did a lot of abstract close-up work. I did a lot of black and white work, because that's how I started in the darkroom, which I really, really enjoy. And I've got a project sort of ticking in the background of black and white photos that I've taken that I've not really showed many people. Well, I've not showed anybody. And at some point, I want to do something with that. I've got a plan for a video where I'm going to show that. But yeah, photography was always there, but it was never the most prominent part. I did have 2 exhibitions, but they were just to raise money for charity, really, because so they were like one small one I had in San Francisco, and I had one in Cheshire, of the local scenes around here, just around where I live, and that.
So they were landscape exhibitions?
They were both landscape exhibitions, yeah.
Okay, so taking it back to when you were doing kind of stuff in the darkroom, at what stage did kind of digital take over from that for you? Yeah,
so I started like you say, I'm probably older than most of the audience, although I'm not really old, am I? But I started about 30 years ago, and for the first 7 or 8 years, probably more than that, maybe 10 years, I was doing just black and white. I didn't do hardly any colour, because I wanted to process it all myself. I wanted to be in control of it myself. And I was just obsessed with Ansel Adams, so I'd read his books and tried to learn how to do his process of printing, dodging, burning, and I had like a dark room in my mum and dad's attic, and then when we had our first house, I had a dark room. But as soon as I could do digital, because I was like, I'd done a technical degree, I'm quite technical oriented, I'm really excited about new technologies. So as soon as digital came along, I got it. And that was probably, my first ever digital camera was probably 1999, I think. And then I got a Canon 3 megapixel little digital camera that was slightly better than the very first one I got, that was literally, I think it might have been 2 megapixels. So I had a 3 megapixel one. And then I got my first sort of SLR digital camera was a Nikon D100, which I believe is 6 megapixels. It might be 12 or 10. I think it's 6. And yeah, that really got me hooked, because that was like, wow, this is amazing. You got an interchangeable lens with a digital camera. And I just felt then my photography improved quite drastically, because I could fail a lot more.
Yeah, I think that step to just being able to shoot openly and freely as much as you want must have made a huge difference to a lot of photographers.
Yeah, it really does. I think people underestimate just I'm not saying photography is easy, but it's a lot easier now than it was when you were a film photographer. And I know there's benefits of film photography because it does make you slow down, but the reality is having the ability to fail in any walk of life, if you can fail multiple times, then you're doing trial and error, and that's the best way to learn. That's why school kids building a tower do better than 30, 40-year-olds trying to build a tower, because the 30, 40-year-olds trying to plan it out and meticulously build it. The school kids just keep doing it, and eventually they build the one that's higher.
Yeah, no, I mean that instant feedback you get from it. Like,
yeah.
I had a camera when I was younger. I used to take family photos and stuff like that. Just whenever we went on holidays, pictures at the zoo.
Yeah,
Nothing interesting, but it was always film. And I remember I'd give it to my dad when it was finished. It might have taken months to get through those. Was it 26 exposures, 32 exposures?
Yeah.
And I'd almost forgotten what I'd taken, and this was just me messing about. So taking that to the kind of professional level and not knowing really what you've got. Obviously, you've got an idea that you've exposed it correctly because if you are a professional, you've learned the techniques. But to be able to get to that stage, must have been so difficult.
Yeah, I think it was, and I definitely noticed that. I mean, it was 20. I think we had 24 and 36 exposures usually, and I remember saving up money to get like a 24 exposure bit of Ilford FP4 film or something like that, and thinking, you know, and like I'd go on a trip and maybe make that film last 4 or 5 days. And then getting back and then thinking, oh God, I've tried to take some waterfalls, but the shutter speed was the wrong shutter speed or something. And it's not as easy to learn. You do slow down though, which is, I think the bad thing about digital cameras is that you end up being a bit, trigger happy sometimes. Yeah. But I think being able to trial and error is just such an amazing thing of digital cameras. And yeah, I mean, I love digital photography.
Did you ever go back to shooting film?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think the only thing I think is it makes a good video because I think it's an interesting video. It's certainly be able to restrict your number of shots. So it would make a good video, but I only ever do videos that I really enjoy doing, and I don't think I'd enjoy doing film photography anymore. I'd have to do black and white and develop my own films, I think, if I did it. I wouldn't say never, because I might do it, but I've not got a desire at the moment.
You've spoken on your channel before about the accident you had, and that was in Yosemite. And it was, I know it wasn't directly responsible for the change you made, but it was around about that time, wasn't it? So talk about how that influenced your decision. Yeah,
I mean, I had an accident. Basically, I've got a pacemaker now, and I had an accident in Yosemite. A lot of people think that the pacemaker was a result of the accident. It wasn't. That I had my heart stopped, and as you know, my heart stopped, and I rolled my car multiple times because I passed out of the wheel in Yosemite Valley. So this was like the height of summer in Yosemite Valley, and I luckily didn't hit anybody else. I hit a few cars, but
how many?
4, I think, was on the police report, but they were all stationary, I think. Maybe one might have been moving, but nobody was hurt, which was a miracle.
So fortunate.
I know. It's crazy when you think about it. And then I've got like some marks on some of the trees, so sorry to the trees in Yosemite. But because I passed out, obviously they need to investigate why that was. And then they found, actually when I was in hospital, I got airlifted to hospital because I snapped both ligaments in my neck. I couldn't hold my head up, and they thought I broke. Maybe I had spinal injuries, but I didn't. I was in hospital, and I found out the next morning my heart overnight stopped for 30 seconds, and I've got the flat line trace of it. And apparently much longer than that's not good.
I wouldn't say 30 seconds is good.
No, 30 seconds is probably not good. But they fitted me with a pacemaker, and it was like really surreal because I'm like, what? I'm getting a pacemaker? So I'm ringing my wife up, who at this point wasn't in America. She still lived in the UK. I said, okay, you might have to come over, because they were moving over a bit earlier because not only have I had this accident, but I've just found out I've got to have a pacemaker. So that was fine, it was fitted, it doesn't have any impact on my life at all. But the impact it had is it made me realise just how short life is. And I think people, you forget that we're just this little blip aren't we? Really, and our lives are so short, and it made me think. I think I'd already done a good job of making the most of my life, but I was stuck in this job at the software company that felt like a job to me rather than the company that I'd set up, because we'd had investors and it was just hard. I didn't enjoy it. I realized I didn't enjoy it. I thought I've got to get out of it. It was the worst financial decision I've ever made, because I lost tons of money doing it, from stock options and all sorts of things. But I just thought, I've got to go and do the thing that I love, and that was photography. So we moved back to the UK. So this was about a year and a half after we'd moved over there. We moved back to the UK, and I'd set up a YouTube channel, and I thought, right, how can I make money from photography? And the obvious decision was workshops. So I'd started to do workshops, but then the YouTube channel took over, and I did more videos, did less workshops. And I'm in a fortunate position now where I make a reasonably good living, a very good living.
So would you say you expected at all to get to where you are now? What was the dream when you first started your YouTube channel?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I expected to get where I was now, but I'm quite a driven person.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do was have the best YouTube channel. I thought, if I'm going to do it, I've got to make sure I try and do it as best I can. And best is a funny thing, isn't it? Because how do you measure best? And what I wanted to do was do what I felt was best, which was my love of photography with my knowledge of photography, because I felt like I had a lot of knowledge of photography. I felt like I'd learned my photography. I wasn't naturally gifted, and I felt because I'd spent a long time learning how to compose an image, yeah, I had a lot of knowledge of how I'd done that, and I could tell people that in a YouTube channel. So I thought that would do really, really well. I'd done quite a lot of corporate videos, and I'd messed about. When I was at university, me and my friend had this really old camcorder, and we used to do crazy videos. And I might be able to find one of them, probably not, but I should do. But we literally did like the upside down challenge, where we used to eat breakfast upside down. So we made the table and everything upside down and pinned everything to the table, sat on chairs upside down, and then tried to pour the milk and everything, and it all went everywhere.
That'd probably do quite well on YouTube.
Well, that'd do well now, wouldn't it? And we did loads of prank videos like that. And I'm talking, this was 30 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. So I'd spent a lot of time doing stupid things like that. But I didn't know how well I was going to come across on video when I started, talking to camera.
Well, it's hard, isn't it? You're clearly a pro now.
Yeah, it is hard. I mean, I find it really difficult. It's so hard listening to your own voice back. But eventually you get over that, and you realise that your voice, my voice, when I hear it, sounds like my voice. I don't.
Yeah, I've completely got that as well. The first few I did, it was just like, oh my God, is that what I sound like? But you do really quickly adjust to it. It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think there's definitely some people that are more naturally gifted about being natural than other people, and I think that's really important for YouTube, and that's where I think, without being big-headed, I think I do that reasonably well, and I think that's just luck, and I think you can either do that or you can't, because I think it's quite hard to be natural on camera.
I think I've started following you when you probably had about 20,000-ish subs. And obviously you came across really well, and that's allowed you to build the success you've had. But what I noticed from when I first saw you is I could tell that everything was very intentional. Do you think your previous work played into that quite a lot, kind of from a marketing perspective and a thinking kind of more long term? Yeah,
I think from a business perspective and marketing perspective, I've done a good job because of my background. I set up a business in a very competitive field and learned quite complex ways of marketing it. Obviously that was business to business, and this is business to consumer. So it's different because you've got to do things slightly differently. But ultimately, it's all about marketing. And there's a funny thing with YouTube. There's a lot of people that say that don't like clickbait and whatever. And the way I see it is there's two different types of clickbait. There's clickbait where you provide a title and a thumbnail that's enticing to somebody, and then you deliver in the video. But you can be a little bit marketing in your title and your thumbnail. That's fine. It's clickbait's where you don't deliver on what you say in your title and your thumbnail. And I think I've done a good job of doing that over the time, and it was easier at the beginning of YouTube as well.
With all that knowledge, you started off on this YouTube journey. Talk us through that kind of first year. How hard was it to kind of build that from nothing?
Yeah, so hard. I mean, it's so hard. I remember trying to get to 100 subscribers. It was, you get excited when you get 2 subscribers in a day. Yep. You're like, yeah. Well, you're at the point now, aren't you, where you're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. So subscribe to Rick's channel.
I think I had 12.
Down there, somewhere down here.
I had 12 on one day last week, and that's
yeah,
like,
so 12, yeah,
pop
so
the
that's
champagne.
Yeah, and then you get a video that starts to do well, and that's exciting. And but it's hard, and then it's still hard, to be honest, because the thing is that I grew in the first year, and I eventually, I don't know how long it took me to get to 1,000 subscribers. It was probably a year, maybe, something like that, which was quite quick. I felt. I didn't think it would be that quick. But then there was a plateau for a long time, and then I had one video that was 7 photography tips I wish I knew earlier. And I made I purposely did it as photography tips rather than landscape photography tips. Okay. And even though my tips were on landscape photos, I felt that a lot of the tips were relevant to anybody. And obviously that had a big impact on the search engine because that meant that if somebody typed in photography, my video would come first. And it broadened my reach on YouTube. And that video just went, and that made me on YouTube, because I went from, I don't know what it was, probably about 10,000 subscribers, and I think I went to like 40,000 subscribers in a few months.
I think that was around the time that
that video might have been the one that you saw.
I think you probably got picked up by F-stoppers or someone like that.
Yeah.
And that's likely where I saw it.
Yeah, and it's funny now because I'm on F-stoppers a lot, and that doesn't really make a lot of difference to my channel. But in the early days, those external references from other channels made such a big difference, and they give YouTube indicators that your channel's of relevance as well. So I think that's really important. But yeah, that one video, you can just literally see how much difference that makes. And then I've had 2 other videos like that since, and those 3 videos I think have all got between sort of 600,000-700,000 and 2 to 3 million views. Yeah, and that one video now that's had 2.2 million or something, which is...
say it so matter-of-factly. I'm going, one of my videos had 7,500 views.
I know, but it's all relevant, isn't it? But
it is, yeah.
You've got it. The thing is, you've got to start somewhere. You've got to realise it's going to be super slow to begin with. But the thing is with YouTube, it's a long game, and you've got to continuously. I say this to you all the time, don't I? I say, Rick, you've got to post all the time. Yeah. But that's hard, isn't it? Because you've got to, 1, be motivated to do it, 2, have creativity to do it, and then time. It's not easy, is it, to make a video? It's no. So time consuming.
I wanted to pick up on that because I think people that just generally watch your channel just see you going out and taking some pictures. Obviously, there's a bit more to it than that. Talk us through how hard it actually is to make a video.
Yeah, I mean, well, for every video, it's probably not so much now, but in the beginning, for every video that I showed on YouTube, I made 2 videos, because I'd go somewhere, I think that video is useless, I'm not going to be able to use it, and I spent a day doing something, planning it and going somewhere, and I didn't use it. But usually a video it's like half a day planning, half a day to a day shooting, and then a day to a day and a half editing. So it's between 2 and 3 days of my week spent. You could probably get that down a little bit, but it's between 2 and 3 days of my week every single week for the last 5 years, because I've done one every Sunday apart from one Sunday. It's 3 days of my week gone just doing a YouTube video.
And then there's the posting it.
Yeah, and then following it up.
To do with affiliate links, following it up, marketing it if you want to market it, posting on social media.
Yeah, just doing the thumbnail. Most times doing a thumbnail take me an hour and a half, 2 hours, because I go back and I'll produce maybe 6 or 7 thumbnails. And then I might switch the thumbnail depending if it's doing well or not.
I was listening to something by, it was a podcast with Mr. Beast on the other day, and he was saying that it takes as long for him sometimes to create a thumbnail as it does to actually make the video.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's just insane.
I know, it is crazy. I've seen the same thing, and Mr. Beast spends so long doing that, and rightly so, because obviously the thumbnail is the key thing that people are going to see. They see the title. The title is important because the title is a description of what's in the video. The thumbnail is the exciting bit of, some of the teasers, I suppose, of what's in the video. And you want it to stand out, so colours, composition of the thumbnail, whether you put text in it or not text, arrows, positioning of things within the thumbnail, depending on what other bits may overlay on it. All those sort of things make such a big difference to the success or not of the video. And they're so important, and I spend so long doing that, and it's quite hard because you get tired because you like at the end of you've edited your video, you've exported it, and you've uploaded it, you've done all those other things. You can't give up at the thumbnail point.
That's it. You just like, oh, it's done now. I want people to watch
you've got
it.
That's because if you do, you spent all that time. And I had a video this week actually that didn't do very well. I mean, my usual videos get about 50,000 views now, the average, and this video looks like it's going to get about 25,000 views, so half the number of views. And I know that the thumbnail just didn't work for it. Now, a few days later, I can't change that. You've got to change the thumbnail quite quickly if you're going to do it.
How quick do you change it?
Well, usually I'll change it within an hour or maybe 2 hours of posting, because you can get good feedback of click-through rates within that first time, and YouTube are going to be quick. If you change it and they see that click-through rate, because the first thing they do is just test it out, but then after 2 days, they've done that testing, and it's more difficult for it to get traction again. It can get traction though, so I probably should change the thumbnail, but I'm now concentrating on the next video because a week, happens quite quickly.
Absolutely. So 5 years, 1 missed video. So I know some weeks you've done more than 1 video. So you've done over 260 videos. That's an incredible amount of work, but it must have been rewarding.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. I mean, I'm dead proud of that actually. I'm more proud of doing that than probably my photography or any of the other things I've done, because I feel like that's not just offered hopefully some entertainment and some education to the people that have watched, but more so, I think it's an archive. It's a record of those years and those amazing experiences that I've had. So I actually watch my own videos now. I know it sounds really sad, but I watched one from 3 or 4 years ago when I went to Iceland with Mass, when I first met Mass Peter Everson, who's like a really good friend now. And I speak to him all the time, almost every day I speak to him about YouTube and what works and what doesn't. And it's nice to be able to see that first part of it. I've got like these amazing videos of all my trips that I've done everywhere.
I think to be able to see how much it's changed over that time.
Yeah, my photography's changed so much. I mean, I think my photography's changed in a few ways. I'm certainly better at quickly finding compositions in quite complex places. So like if it's like quite a wide angle shot, I'm better at finding that on the top of a mountain, or if a woodland, for instance, I think I'm much better at doing that. I think what really helped that for me was releasing the 3 books, and especially the second 2 books, because I've done a vistas book, which is just general big mountainscapes and things like that, a woodlands book, and then I'm just about to release a seascapes book. In fact, when this video goes out, it's probably released. But those books have meant, certainly the woodland and the seascapes have meant that I'm focusing on that particular sort of genre of landscape photography. And I really fell in wood. I didn't do a huge amount of woodlands, but when I started doing woodlands, I fell in love with it. And I felt like you know, that for me is probably my favorite type of photography because it's so relaxing, and also things aren't as transient when you're doing woodland photography. You know, the trees don't move that much, and if you get fog, it tends to last for a little bit of time, and you can go and shoot when it's raining. If it's raining all day, go down to a woodland and shoot, and it's always lovely to do.
Yeah, I think it just slows you down as well, doesn't
Yeah.
it? When you're waiting for light, whether it be at the coast or up a mountain and stuff, you end up, well, I've done it, I've seen you do it, running around like a bit of a headless chicken, depending on what the conditions are like. And
it makes for a good video when you do it.
It does, but if you're on your own trying to record
hard,
that and photograph it at the same time, I mean, I know when we've both been there trying to do that, it's been difficult sometimes to know exactly what
it's so hard,
do.
isn't it? I mean, you helped me with most of my videos that I've done on YouTube. I've done myself, but more recently you've helped with some of them when we've been on the road, like when we were in Snowdonia, and having that extra pair of hands is amazing. And sometimes I think but it's still manic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's still. I remember when we were recording the masterclass in the sand dunes in Harris, and well, you did lose your drone, but you running like a madman down the down the sand dunes.
So my drone ran out of battery because it was fighting against the wind, and it just landed in these sand dunes, which was just this expanse of grass that looked the same, and didn't know whereabouts it was. And I knew the light was kicking off, but I also wanted to find my drone, and I had to film Nigel, but I wanted to find my drone. Nightmare. But yeah, it's.
I know, and I've been shooting and having a camera set up that I'm pointing to and looking at the camera like this, and then I've had a GoPro in my bag that's recording me open my bag from the inside, and then I'd have my drone in the air that's rotating around me like this, and then I'm doing all these things, and I remember once when I was in the Faroes, I forgot my drone was in the air, and then I only remember because my handset started beeping because it got to low power, and my drone's like going around like this. But yeah, it's you're so woodland photography is good. Getting back to the point, I can see my level of photography improving because it always improves. I feel like in photography, you never stop learning. I always feel like I'm getting better, you know, every year.
Well,
sometimes it's better at a slower rate, but.
Yeah, I obviously see a lot of you on location and hear the self-criticism at times. Oh, I should have done this or I should have done that. It is something where you can go on a shoot and for whatever reason just completely miss the best shot. It's
tricky. I mean, because I feel like I always miss the best shot, and I think that's one thing that's really improved my photography, just thinking not to worry about it. There's always a better shot. If you just get the best out of what you've got and don't try and take too many photos, then you'll improve your photography loads. If you're always seeking the best shot when you're on location, then you end up with a lot of average shots. And that's one thing that I learned, you know, a few years back, and that's definitely stood me in good stead, really.
I think quite often there's a fear associated with it of missing that best shot or missing the best conditions. And I think people get very hung up on that.
Yeah, they do, and I get that because I think I still do a little bit, but there's always going to be something better. Always. You're never ever going to be in the best part of the beach or the best part of the mountain or have the best light the day before might have been better or whatever. There's always something better, but if you can only do what you can do with what's in front of you, so don't try too hard sometimes. Just think, how can I make this shot or this area that I've got with this light coming in the best I possibly can? And I see it so much when I'm teaching workshops that people will just photograph something, think I've got the shot, photograph something else, think they've got the shot, and then get 10 shots. But actually, if they'd stayed in that first one or maybe the second one and waited for the light to get better, then they would have got less shots, but they'd have got one amazing one shot.
I remember you speaking about that. I think it was in one of your videos from Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
Because you weren't 100%.
No, I think I might have had COVID, I don't know, but I was.
Yeah, you were. I remember you were.
The landscape was my bed. I was like, just waiting for things to happen. But that was really good because I just stayed in the same place and got amazing shots.
Going back to the books, you speak about how long it takes you to make a video, and you're doing this week in, week out, but you've also got the books and you've created the masterclasses. and you're running a photography competition,
Yeah,
and
I don't know why
you
I
do
do
your
all these things.
workshops.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've missed other things out.
Probably, I don't know. I do too much.
Planning trips to Antarctica, wherever
yeah.
else. So how do you balance that with life and family?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it seems like I'm doing so much, and I am, because I do work a lot of hours. There's no doubt about that. But a lot of it doesn't seem like, the bits that seem like work to me are probably editing videos. It's quite difficult because I struggle with sitting at a computer for a long period of time because of my back. But most of it doesn't seem like work. The one thing that I'm fairly good at is, and I learned this growing my company, is done is better than perfect.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not the case, and you want to get closer to perfect. But certainly for doing projects, that's always the case, and that allows me, because I'm quite a messy person. I don't worry about tidying things up. You know, I'm just like, get it done, get it out, and then improve it once it's out. You know, there's certain things that aren't quite like that, like the masterclasses, for instance. You know, I wanted to make sure I did an amazing job of those, and I worked on both of those with you, and they took us, well, both of them took us about a year to produce each of them. Yeah. Hours and hours and hours of work. But we still had to get it out the door. If we'd have kept iterating it, we could have probably got it better and better. But you get to a point where there's no return, and time is my most important thing. So I always think, is this bit of time that I've got, this block of time, going to serve me best, you know, doing this thing? And if it's not, I forget it and do something else. And yeah, you can waste time really easily if you're not careful.
Talking of that, I know you haven't necessarily wasted time recently, but you've obviously spoken about your knee injury recently, and you've been suffering with your back over the last sort of, years, but made a lot more over the last kind of couple of years. How frustrating is that for you at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, that's really hard because, a lot of people, I'm not very open about my mental health and stuff like that online, because I like to stay positive, and I feel that that's a good way of me managing it a little bit. But I do struggle, if I'm honest, because, you know, now sat here, I'm in a reasonable amount of pain with my back. Whenever I'm sat down, I'm in pain, and it gets to the point where I can't sit any longer and I have to lie down. A lot of my work that I do on a computer is lying down, and I've got this stand that goes over me, and I'm like this. Probably 60-70% of my work is done in that state. I've not sat on a sofa like this for years. You know, I can sit down like this doing an interview for maybe an hour, but that's it. And if I was watching something to relax, it would just be impossible, because I wouldn't be able to relax because I was in pain. My knee's my own fault, and that's just made things harder. But my back is really, really difficult, and I take a lot of painkilling drugs, very strong painkilling drugs. And I hopefully I've got an operation soon, and I'm going to get it fixed. But I'm nervous about that. So yeah, it's tough. I find that doing things is the best thing, but sometimes having the motivation to do that thing is really, really difficult.
How do you think you've carried on with that motivation to do?
Because I always want to get better. The thing is with me that I'm competitive, and I've got that desire to get better. So I'm always like thinking, how well am I doing? You know, how many people are watching my YouTube video? How many books have I sold? And it's not all about money. I don't think it's so much about money. It's just like I like to have a measurement of my success, and I'm in that respect, I'm very competitive. And I want to improve my photography as well. And I still feel like an imposter when it comes to landscape photography. I still feel like, you know, why do people like my photos? Because I always look at my photos very critically. And so I show you them, don't I? And I say, I'm not sure about this, Rick, or this isn't great, or I wish I'd done this. And you're always, you know, very kind, but I don't know, I just feel like an imposter all the time.
I think a lot of us have that. I've had that for years. I don't know where that comes from. Part of me wonders if it comes from kind of a formal training point of view. You never did a degree in photography, for example. I never did a degree in filmmaking.
I think so.
And I wonder if it's partly that. You almost like, well, do I quite fit into this? I'm a photographer because it's not necessarily been my background previously. I don't know.
The other thing is that I've never gone really hard about selling my prints. So I've never approached any galleries. I've never, that's not been a form of revenue generation for me. I do sell my prints and I earn a little bit of revenue, but it probably makes up 3 or 4% of my overall revenue. And because I've never looked at that and I see myself as part YouTuber, entertainer, trainer and part photographer, then the photographer part is just part of the whole package, if you see what I mean. And so I'm not like other photographers that I might look up to that just do photography, like Mark Littlejohn or Neil Burnell or somebody who's just, they do have different roles. They didn't start off as professional photographers, but they've dedicated all their energy to being a photographer, if you see what I mean. Yeah. And maybe one day I'll do that, and I'll have another exhibition, and I'll push my art a little bit more. I think to do that, I think I've got to have a focus on a set of images. So maybe I need to focus on photographing a particular woodland and think about, and I think doing a project like that would be something that I'd be interested in doing. And then saying, documenting that woodland and the change over that woodland over seasons or something, and producing some really nice art around that project, because I feel like that's then more marketable and people would see me more as an artist rather than as a YouTuber.
Yeah, they are kind of quite separate in a way, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
It's quite a strange perception.
I'm a jack of all
sometimes.
trades, really, I think, and I see myself as a master of none, I suppose. So. But I realise I'm good at photography, but I would like to be able to do that, but it's not a focus at the time.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, like you say, you've only got so much time.
Yeah, I've only got so much time, yeah.
Where do you see yourself going over the next kind of 2 to 3 years?
I think I've got to change something, because I do feel like I'm getting to the point where, not burnout, but it's like I want to be a little bit more creative. So I've got a few ideas of how my YouTube channel might change a little bit. I probably don't want to talk about those too much at the moment because they might not happen. I don't want to get anybody thinking that's good or bad. And I'd like to do more with my photography. So, what we just spoke about then, I've got some projects in mind. Black and white project I just spoke about, and there's another project around woodland photography that I'd like to do. When I do that, though, I want to involve. So I'd do something with another group, so whether that's some sort of conservation or documenting the change in a particular landscape or something like that. But that's what I'm interested in doing, because I feel like that will serve both purposes. It'll allow me to make some really interesting videos around that journey, and it'll also produce a set of work that I think stands alone as a good, artistic piece.
You touched on the fact that you don't really talk about your mental health much. You do work on your own quite a lot. Do you think that affects you at all? Because I've noticed recently that with me working on my own a lot of the time, I do sometimes find myself a little isolated.
Yeah, I think so. We were speaking about this just earlier, weren't we? And just saying, I was saying that it's funny, I don't seek out other company. I like being on my own, and I'm quite happy being on my own for long periods. In fact, one of my favourite activities is just being on top of a mountain on my own, hiking up in the dark and getting there for sunrise. There's been so many times that has happened, and if I see another photographer at the top of a mountain in the morning, I get so annoyed. I'm like, this is my mountain. What are you doing?
In Scotland, there was a guy going up the same way, or he's gone that way. Okay, we're going this way.
We're going that way, yeah. So that was when we were hiking up in Glencoe, wasn't it? But I do feel that, like, when I get together with you, I really enjoy it, and I was like, it's not so bad being with you, Rick.
Thanks.
Yeah, but I enjoy it when I'm around groups of people as well. But I'm not that type of person that seeks out being around groups of people. But I feel that I need to do it a little bit more, because I end up, like, recently I've ended up just thinking, not having the motivation to get out, and I feel like being with groups of people, certainly with photography or videography, I think it's a great way of learning. It's a great way of being inspired. It's fun, and it's just good. I feel for me, if I'm really trying to get the best photo possible, it probably isn't best to be with somebody else because I need to be in my own mindset. But I feel if I'm learning, if I'm trying to learn, then I always learn more if I'm with somebody else. So I've photographed a lot with you, I photographed a lot with James Popsis, and I photographed a lot with Masper Iversen. Recently in Antarctica, there was lots of photographers on the same ship. All the photographers, not just Alan and Adam and James, everybody, I learned something from because I saw them doing something. I thought, oh, that's interesting. But when you're with all those people and you're talking to them, I find that it's not as easy myself to get a photo because I feel like I've got to be really quite focused on the composition.
Yeah, it's distracting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's not. I don't mean that in a bad way.
No.
So I think there's a balance between those two that I need to get, and I probably haven't got right yet.
Do you think you've missed workshops a bit over the last couple of years?
Yeah, definitely missed workshops. I don't do that many because they're time consuming, but I do work. The reasons I do workshops, I used to do workshops when I started it as my main source of income, and as I said, that's workshops have just dropped as other revenues increase, like YouTube revenue, sponsorships, and things like that. However, I never wanted to stop doing them because I really enjoy them because it's just great fun getting together with somebody, a small group of people. Usually it's between 4 and 8 people, depending whether it's myself or another professional photographer like Mas or James, and it's great. I mean, you have a great time. You talk about loads of different types of photography. You see different lenses, cameras, different approaches, and that's really good. And I do miss that.
I bet because it's a big part of your life planning these trips to Faroes, Iceland, Lake District, Scotland.
Yeah. I've got to admit, COVID made things so difficult. I'm glad that's on the decline, although it's on the up at the moment, isn't it? But anyway.
Well, touch wood. We don't go back to there. So I've got a few questions that people have asked me on Instagram just to kind of finish off, and the first one's a bit of a cheat one because it's actually a question from me. But do you think it is necessary for photographers to be able to do video now to be successful in landscape photography, or do you think you can focus solely on photography and still be successful?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, isn't it? I definitely think it's very useful to be able to do video because you just look at all the promotion methods. Video is, having a video skill is so sought after in any industry now because it's so valuable. You look at TikTok, you look at the way that Instagram and YouTube have just moved to YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels and pushing those. And the reason they do that is because video engages with people. So if you want to promote, your photos, you might be a seascape photographer, then it's fantastic to be able to show the noises and the noises and the immersive environment of where you were when you took that. It might just be a 15-second clip, but if you can do that in a very knowledgeable way, then I think that massively ups your level of marketing and promotion that you can do for your photography.
Absolutely. I think it's not only that, it's necessary. If you're just posting photos, your reach is going to be severely impacted.
Oh, it makes a massive difference. Yeah, massive difference. Yeah, and I'm funny because I need to post so much more video on my Instagram, which you'd think I would do, because I've got literally reams of BRoll, of amazing BRoll, but I never do, which is dumb, really. But yeah,
time.
It is time.
It's the
time.
Yeah. Okay, just quickly then, how do you combat creative block?
Just quickly. How do I come back? Oh, I'm not very good at that really at the moment because I've got a bit of creative block at the moment. You go through it ebbs and flows, doesn't it? I suppose at the moment I'm really struggling. I've not produced any photos I really like for a long time. I don't think, not like amazing photos. The things I try and do is do something different, and so one of the things I'm about to go and do is photograph down a canal, and I can't walk that far because of my knee, so I'm just going to go on a canal and try and do some abstract stuff. Or I think if you do things different and go outside what you normally do, then that tends to help. I'm not a great one for having a break.
Clearly.
Yeah, I think Yeah, I mean, you just need to do things differently, and that might be having a break from what you usually do.
Yeah.
You know, getting out is the best bet. Getting out, don't stay at home and, you know, worry about it too much. Just get out and do something different.
Would you still take photos if nobody was looking or listening?
Oh God, yeah, I did it for years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I print photos that nobody ever sees, and I've got loads of photos that I've never shown, and I print. I mean, you know how much I print. I'm literally the amount of print and ink I go through is ridiculous, and I just print all the time because I absolutely love looking at prints. I've got like prints behind me there. Every surface has got a print on.
Yeah, or on the wall, over there, on the table.
Yeah. So, and that's not for anybody but me. Hardly anybody sees some of these prints. I show some of them in my YouTube video, and also I just enjoy being out, and I enjoy the thrill of taking something and thinking, oh, what's it going to look like when I get back? Usually it's not as good as I think it was going to be, but I enjoy that thrill so much, and that's just purely for me.
I think if you're not doing it for you, what's the point?
No, there isn't any point, and that's why I think my YouTube channel is successful, because people know I'm doing it for me.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. Dream project or place to shoot?
Dream project. Well, Antarctica was my dream project and place to shoot, so I've done that, so I need another one now. I've got a few ideas for one, so there's a few countries, I can name some. So New Zealand I want to go to. In fact, I've just edited a photo for a video that's coming out, that'll be out now, from a guy, some forest in New Zealand that just looks epic. So I want to go to New Zealand. Japan is a place I really like to go to. South Korea, so there's some mountains with these amazing sort of twisty sort of bonsai-looking trees in South Korea that I'd like to go to, and China I'd like to go to, and it's probably not the right thing to say at the moment, and I probably won't be able to go, but Russia would be quite an interesting one, the east coast of Russia. I think there's some nice looking places there. I think it's all around the same area, I suppose, that area of China and Russia and South Korea and Japan. It's sort of that neck of the woods.
Nicely convenient.
Yeah, go to them all. But yeah, around there I really want to go to, and then a lot of places in America I'd like to go to as well, but mostly those, I'd say.
Yeah. On the flip side of that, this is the last question. If your landscape is boring, that's near to your house,
yeah,
what would you recommend doing? I know, say you live in Central California where it's completely flat, just agriculture all around you, and you can't drive. You can't drive to Yosemite or the coast or wherever. What would you do?
Yeah, it's tough. There's no denying it, because obviously, you know, if you look at all my photos, then there are amazing woodlands, there are amazing seascapes, and they usually include mountains. So if you live in a flat area, then that's difficult. But there's always going to be light. So you always have light in any part of the country, no matter what it is. I've been in Central California, I know what it's like. You get a lot of blue sky, but you get nice sunsets. You occasionally get interesting clouds. So then it's about finding, you know, that one tree or that you know, amazing road, or that leading line, or that old dilapidated barn or something, and then going and shooting those at the best time. You know, in Central California, I'd probably think, is there a place I can get to that, you know, had reasonably dark skies, maybe do some astro, try something a little bit different. It's interesting because Mads Peter Iversen lives in Denmark, and I remember speaking to him when I first met him about Denmark, and he said it's a boring country, I don't want to photograph it. That's why I go to the Faroes and Iceland. And then in lockdown, he photographed it loads, and now he loves photographing in Denmark. He's found amazing woodlands. He's found all these places he didn't even know exists. So there are always places, but that it's not that. It's, you know, it's good to go to these other places, but there are always things. And if you think about light and subject, then you can always find a nice composition around that. And the subject just may have to change. It might have to be a dilapidated barn, or a lone dead tree, or, you know, a leading line of a road or something. Or maybe you just go out in the day and find and find something that contrasts with the blue sky, something that's red that contrasts with the blue sky.
Yeah, I think something I've noticed as well is it can be quite, I don't want to get into a conversation about social media because we're trying to wrap this up, but I think looking at Instagram and seeing all these photographs of amazing places is only going to make you feel worse about the area you live. If you consider it to be a boring landscape, you're going to think, oh, I can never get a photo like that because of where I live, and you probably need to move.
It's always better. The grass is always greener, isn't it? And there are better places and worse places. I'm not denying that, but I travel from Great Britain to other places because I think, I want to go to Iceland for the volcanic stuff or whatever. Most people would think Great Britain's amazing. Why do you have to travel anywhere? There's always a better place, but you can always find things where you were. And I think lockdown helped in COVID, that we all found the places. I did a lot of the woodland stuff that I didn't even know existed really close to where I live now in my woodland book.
That's it. I think it is important because it's easily accessible, it's nearby, and I think once you get to know a place, like you've said, you start to make better images.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Brilliant. I think on that note, we'll wrap it up.
Cool.
Thank you so much for talking to me.
Yeah,
really
thanks.
Appreciate it. It's been great.
I've really enjoyed it.
Nice one.
Cool.
Cheers.
Thanks.
I hope you found that as interesting and as useful as I did. I really enjoyed that chat with Nigel, and it's great to get an insight into some of the things he doesn't normally discuss. Now, if you did like that, Nigel's mentioned on his channel this week that he thinks it might be a good idea for me and him to maybe do a podcast together. So if you think that's a good idea, or you've got any ideas of things we could discuss, stick a note in the comments below. And if you like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up, because that helps YouTube to let people know that this video is hopefully worth their time. And I really think it is, because Nigel's obviously made a big success of his YouTube channel, and he's put a lot of time and effort into doing that. And I think that the way he's gone about it, the way he's explained it, and the work he's put in is something that I'm certainly learning from as I hopefully grow this channel into the future. And I hope you learn a bit too. Thanks very much for watching, and until next time.